every day that Liverpool is on top of the league, I think is a special day. And on our channel, it's even more special today because we're joined by Mo Stewart. If you are a Liverpool supporter, I'm sure you've seen him on the Anfield rap, and more recently, you've heard his questions in the press conferences as well. Mo, first of all, wishing you a very belated happy birthday. How are you doing, Mo?
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, it's glad that you mentioned my birthday because the weekend could not have been any better. If Liverpool Football Club were aware it was my birthday, they certainly laid on quite the spread for me with that particularly the Saturday night game. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun recently, and I'm doing good. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you on Menace in the Monk, Mo. I just want to say one thing more recently. I mean, because of the results that you mentioned, whenever I meet a Liverpool supporter these days in India, there are plenty of us, trust me. Um we have this smile on our face, our shoulders are broader. Cautiously, everyone is a bit optimistic. How are you feeling, Mo?
I'm feeling great, and I think it's strange as well because I think for most of us, we wanted to believe that there would be no drop off after the end of the Klopp era. We wanted to believe that these players were still good enough, and that the people in charge of hiring a manager hired a manager who'd still be able to get the best out of them, and we'll be able to continue on our way. But there was also that nagging doubt in the back of your mind about, well, what if it goes wrong? And that nagging doubt was added to by the fact that all of our rivals were praying that it was going to go wrong. And so the pressure was very much on, particularly in those early days. But I was lucky enough to be in the USA for the pre-season tour. So I got to see Liverpool play against Arsenal and Manchester United on that tour. And after what I saw in those, you can say preseason games don't matter. I was already enthused that we would be able to be good. Did I think we'd be this good? Probably not. But again, I do think that we have to recognize the fact that we've got a very, very good squad of players.
Is this a universal thought process more, because that's what we feel as well, the match going fans. I mean, by the way, so my name is Manas and we have Nidhi as well. We are part of Menace and the Monk. He couldn't be here. Every one of us are very, not very, like quietly surprised at what's happening. Is that the same thinking of a match going fan as well?
I think you want to say you've got confidence. I would say probably from the Manchester United game, from that point on, I think everyone was like, okay, these guys are on it this season. We've got some good times ahead. Those first two games, obviously, in fact, the very first half of the first game against Ipswich, there was a little bit of trepidation. It was like, this isn't quite
Mm.
as well as I'd hoped it to. But then obviously we're able to change it and turn it around in the second half. And the ability to adapt to how the game's going and to be able to turn it in our favor, I think has been such a recurring theme that that's what builds confidence. And yeah, I mean, we all in our lives have different levels of confidence. There are some people who are more optimistic than others, and some people are more fatalistic. And we have to remember the fact that this was a summer in which the transfer window did not go as planned. Now,
Yep.
there was two very high profile transfers that didn't go through, the Anthony Gordon one and of course Martin Zubimendi. And as a fan base, when you're seeing everybody else add to the squad and look like they're strengthening and you're standing still, it can become a worry. But again, going back to what I said about the preseason tour, we got to see a couple of open training sessions there. And what I saw of Arne Slot was a man who looked like he came alive on the training pitch. And it was no surprise to me that he wanted to get a really good look at every single member of his squad before he started saying, well, I'll need this and I need that. So consequently, summer transfer business was always going to be difficult, I felt. For it to end up completely empty, though, it does kind of add a level of nervousness, a layer of nervousness. But as I said before, I mean, we have to give these players credit and some
Yep.
respect as well because they were they were top of the league in April. And it was only really the last 7 or 8 games that saw them fall away. And so you have to say that he's been able to get the best out of these players, and that really does bode well for the future.
Absolutely, and there's so many positives right now. He just seems like such a good communicator. The way he talks, the way he just speaks, and also there's a, dare I say, I don't want to like generalize, but there is a bit of Dutchness in him, of course, because he is
Mhm.
Dutch. He's just so honest about everything, right, Mo? And you must have, and like I remember there was this Twitter thread of yours where you said that he is saying the same thing that probably you asked, but in a different manner. Maybe it was about Curtis. Maybe I'm getting that wrong, but
Mm.
uh, uh, since you've been interviewing him over there, uh, in the press conferences, do you find any similarities between him and Jurgen Klopp, or do you find any differences between him and Jurgen Klopp? Because I was always of the opinion that if Arne Slot comes in and he tries to be Jurgen Klopp, it's not going to
Mm.
work.
No.
He has to be the man that he is, and that's what so far so good.
I would say that is the biggest similarity is that he has no interest in trying to be anybody else. He's just trying to be himself. And I think again we need to give credit to the people who decided that he should be the man to come in and do this job because they obviously saw that in him. They saw that he'd be able to do all those things. And obviously the level at Feyenoord is a club within the Dutch sphere that has pressure, that has the expectation to be challenging for titles, if not necessarily winning them every season. So he would have experienced that, but there's no denying that Liverpool is a whole other level in all of those things. So there was always going to be that kind of curiosity as to how he adapted. But if you listen to Feyenoord fans, they would have all told you that no, this guy will be able to do the job. The charisma of the man was mentioned on multiple occasions, and it's a different kind to Jurgen Klopp. You mentioned the Dutchness, and there is a very much a straight talking element to it. But I've been there plenty of times when he's been there cracking jokes. I mean, literally the last press conference we had where he made the joke about Curtis Jones's becoming a father and about how he had nothing to do with it. Um, but yeah, that felt like the kind of line that Jurgen would come out with. And it's just more about him being comfortable in that space. And I think when we remember Jurgen Klopp in press conferences, we have to remember there was two kinds. So there was the early days when he
Yeah,
was still fresh and new, and everybody was also kind of a little bit not they weren't used to him. So there was kind of an element of giving him the benefit of the doubt and a curiosity about him and kind of how we got with Ange Postecoglou at Spurs last season when he first came in and everyone was talking about how he was a breath of fresh air and all those things. Well, the treadmill of press can eventually wear you down, and the last
sure.
years of that's what exactly what we saw. It got to the point where when things wasn't going his way, you could really tell that he'd rather be anywhere but where he was there answering questions. And it does start to affect you as the press pack. If you look around and you feel like you look into the manager's eyes and you feel like he's waiting for you to ask him something stupid so he could snap, then the
Yeah.
questions suddenly like they become these long winding things where you're not quite sure whether you want to actually say the thing you're trying to say in case he goes off at you. There's none of that at the moment with Arne Slot. We're still very much in the honeymoon period.
Do you think he's less emotional, like when it comes to a few things? I mean, it's very early days, like you said, and
Mm,
the fact that the results have just not gone our way. We have absolutely killed it early on in the season. So obviously, it's a positive mindset for supporters, even for Arne Slot as well. But I just get the feeling, and I'm saying this in the most positive way, Mo. I get the feeling he treats it like a 9 to 5 job. He
mm,
and like he didn't even get his family to Liverpool, if I'm not wrong. Like
no.
he's like, listen, I need to make sure that hey, I am settled here, I am welcomed here, I'm wanted here. I feel okay. Listen, this is my long-term gig, and then I can bring my family over. So I get the feeling that the Jurgen Klopp was my father, right? And unfortunately, my father has parted ways now with my mother. And here comes a stepfather, who I'm trying to like love, but it's gonna take some time to love. But so far, so good. He's doing everything right. But still, it takes a little time for me to be like, all right, dad, listen
Yes.
to me. You know what I'm talking about, right? This,
I do. I
I,
do know exactly what you mean.
yeah, because
And
I feel he's a little less emotional with everything involved.
Yeah, I think in the general main that's true. I think there are times when he lets it out. So I think every single manager, unless you're Carlo Ancelotti, when you're on the sideline, it is a time of high emotion and high. The blood pressure must be through the roof. So we've seen on occasions where Arne Slot has showed a little bit of emotion. I think of again of Old Trafford. That was one where probably the first time you saw him actually properly celebrate goals. Before that, he was trying to do the "oh no, this is just what we do" thing. This is how it's supposed to go.
Trying to be a bit cool.
Yeah, yeah, and we've seen it a couple of times since. So I think of, I mean, in the Aston Villa game, if you saw his reaction to the foul that wasn't given against Salah, and then obviously Nunes going through to score.
Yo.
So yeah, and I believe there was another game recently where there was some crazy. I think it was the Arsenal away game, and it's almost like he was just getting his first taste of what it means to be refereed by here in England, and how sometimes the decisions can seem incomprehensible. And he's getting his
Yeah.
first taste of that. But I think you're right. In the general manner, he is trying to be less emotional because that's really how his team plays football differently. So Jurgen Klopp was always keen to try to harness the emotion of his players and try to use that as a positive force to drive them on when they're tired or when they're maybe not quite at their best, to be able to listen to the crowd and feel that and get some more energy, but also feel the pain and longing that these people have and use it to drive you forward. Whereas Slot tends to be more about the tactics, the detail, and saying, okay, you don't necessarily always need to rely on those emotional things to get the job done. If we have the plan and it's in place properly, then you don't need it as much. Although that said, in recent weeks, I think he's really seen what the power of Anfield can do. I think the Brighton game was the perfect example. That was the first time where he was probably privy to the fact that the crowd decided that they were winning that game. And the crowd then decided that we're going to do everything we can to help you win that game. And it's funny because he may not necessarily have been aware of it or maybe even really kind of understood how deep it goes, but the players certainly are. They all know. And it was really obvious the amount of times the players were turning to the crowd and throwing their arms up to say, give us more, give us more. And he's an intelligent man. He'd have seen that and been like, okay, well, we can use this at a time. So you may well see a few more instances of him courting that. Whether he himself is going to show emotion, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, because that Brighton game, more like you clearly mentioned, when their left back Estapian went up against Trent, they had a tiffle, and and then after that, so we do a few watch alongs. So we unfortunately we can't travel to Liverpool often. We live in India, so we do a few watch alongs. And I was telling my colleague after that game got done, I think we have our Anfield back once again because there was so much
Mm,
said more about the atmosphere early on in the season. Too many people from abroad. The atmosphere is not good. The hospitality and all of that. That moment and that game, and after that, if you look at Leverkusen, if you look at Villa sounded like a European night in my ear over here. It sounded like a European night. When it comes to Liverpool, when it comes to the locals, Mo, what can you tell us? How are we feeling about the season so far? Because we have 5 points clear, we're 100% in the UEFA Champions League. We're in the quarterfinal of the League Cup. We're going to play Southampton. If I mean, barring a huge ass upset, we should be in the semi final. Uh,
mm.
is there a sense, all right, something special is happening right now? Do you sense that?
I do, and I sense that people around here are starting to feel it because we've been in these situations before. We've gone on runs where you're going toe to toe with Manchester City for the title, and we've gone on runs where we've blown everybody away and won the title. And so you do get a sense of the rhythms of a season and the certain markers that you reach. So being 5 points clear this early on, it's a blessing and a curse. I think it's a blessing because it tells you that you're doing very well. It tells you that your team is good enough to be at the stage, but it does tend to ramp up the pressure.
Yeah.
And we haven't won anything yet, and the manager's very aware that we haven't won anything yet. But suddenly, everybody else outside of the Liverpool bubble are now looking at Liverpool and saying, "Well, they're the team to beat. They're the ones who we expect to win." And how you deal with that expectation is going to be very key because there were times last season when I don't feel like we dealt with it very well. Um, Again, if you could argue that last season was a special case because of the nature of it being Klopp's last season, and again going back to the emotion, all of what that entails,
It was
but
too emotional. It
it
was too
was,
emotional. Yeah.
it was, and to a certain extent, it was almost inevitable. There was no way that we could have really dampened that down because of how the strong the feeling was from all of us to him, and the desire from to us to give him something, and not just us, the players as well. So you can tell them that it doesn't that they need to calm down, but players are human. It's very hard to do that in that situation. This feels like a clean slate, and I also think that the players are excited and enthused by doing something new, doing it a different way. Because, again, like I said, players are human. So whether or not they loved Klopp, and I don't think it's a doubt that all of them loved him, there are some of them who probably didn't love every single thing about how he went about it, whether it was training, whether it was tactics in games. And so to hear something new, particularly as I mentioned, from someone with such acute attention to detail, someone who is able to give them so many different potential scenarios of, well, if this happens, then that might happen. If they do this, then we can do this. And then to see them play out in the game, that's going to give you such confidence to say, okay, well, our manager knows what he's doing. He knows how to get the best out of us. He knows how to put us into position to win again and again and again. And winning is infectious,
Yeah.
whether or not you're a fan or you're a player. So I do think, to circle back to your original question, I do think that people are getting the sense that something special is going on, regardless of how good or not the other teams are. Because this is the other part of the story, isn't it? It's not just that Liverpool are good; it's that Manchester City and Arsenal have been faltering, and that maybe allows you to think, okay, well, we can put a significant gap between us and the rest of them. The game against Manchester City in a couple of weeks is going to be
Yep.
massive on that score.
I am of the opinion more if we win our next four league games, which is Southampton, City, and then after that, the two away games are so tough. Newcastle away and Everton away, because of the emotion, because of the like legit having no rest between them, the 3 or 2 day gap, especially between Newcastle and Everton. I think if we are able to get maximum points in those four fixtures more, I don't want to jump the gun, but I think then even the most timid Liverpool supporter who's saying, oh no, it's too early, they would start believing, all right?
Mhm.
If we beat Man City, of course, it's an 8 point gap, and if we win the rest of the games, it's bare minimum 8 points, and 8 points is a lot more when I think about it, and that is sandwiched between Real Madrid. Okay,
Mhm.
which brings me to Real Madrid right now, because under Jurgen Klopp, more I don't know what happened. It was just some mental barrier, or whatever it was. We just never got the better of Real Madrid. I was in Paris for the 2022 Champions League final, and that was one of the worst days of my life. I couldn't
Mhm.
believe we didn't win that game. We were just so good that game. But now we meet Real Madrid, and it's a must win for them. We can afford not to win that game,
Yeah.
right? We are in that position. Mo, how do we approach that fixture according to you?
I think we approach it in the same way we would approach a knockout game against Real Madrid. I don't think that the way that this manager works, he will entertain any ideas of, oh well, it doesn't matter if we don't win, until the final whistle blows in this scenario that we haven't won. At that point, he will say, well, yeah, we can wear this, whatever the result is. But I think the important thing to remember is, as you say, Real Madrid are in more need of the points than we are at this stage in the group. And I believe they've still got Brest to play, and I can't remember who their other fixtures are against, but there aren't any gimmies. I mean,
Mo,
the
if we
game,
beat them, if we beat them, sorry to interrupt you, Mo, if we beat them, they're gonna be in the playoffs.
yes. And I mean, to be honest, if they were in the playoffs, you'd still probably back them. But what you have to hope then is if they're in the playoffs, then perhaps maybe Arsenal will be too. So then they'll have a playoff against
Or
Arsenal.
Bayern. Or Bayern.
Mm. But the other thing about it is that the other reason why I don't think that they would entertain any kind of ideas of this game doesn't matter is that we have a chance to finish them off. We have a chance to make sure they don't even get to the playoffs. And what we have seen with Real Madrid traditionally, historically over the years, is they may look ropey in November, but they are on it in May and in April and in
Yep.
March.
Yep.
So you get the chance to finish them off. You finish them off. And I think that's the attitude Liverpool have to approach this game with. We don't be thinking, well, it doesn't matter if we win and all this kind of thing. We have to go out there and say, no, we need to lay a marker down because, again, the psychological element of us not being able to beat Real Madrid, because it's not just the final of 2022. It's not just the final of 2018. It was the quarterfinals in 2021. It was
Yep.
around the 16 in 22, 23. So we're always going to have to face this team. Like it seems like every year we're in the Champions League, we play Real
Yeah.
Madrid. And in fact,
Yeah.
the only year we didn't play Real Madrid was the year we won
We
it.
won it. Yep. Yep. Yep.
So
Yep. Yep.
I think that we have to be in a situation where it's like, okay, well, we have to be able to deal with it. We need to break the stigma of turning up and thinking, oh, well, it's Real Madrid, so we're not going to win. Oh, we can't do anything about it. Because, like, don't get me wrong, they have got good players. They've got very, very good players. But right now, they are struggling to get any kind of coherence out of any of these players. Because, yes, I'm sure most of your followers would have seen the Clasico where they got
Yep.
absolutely humped by Barcelona 4-0 in that game.
Of course.
But they've been behind in all four of their Champions League games so far. And yes, they come back to win against Stuttgart and against Dortmund. But the other two, they didn't. So they are in a situation where they are extremely vulnerable. They've just had another defensive injury to Eder Militao, along with Danny Carvajal. So they are going to be at full stretch. And I think that if we go into that game with the confidence that we've shown, then we will be able to put them to the sword.
We should. I hope we do. Because I think even Vasquez is out, even Chouameni is out for them. Mbappe, sure, he scored a few goals against Osasuna. Rodrigo is out. They have a few players out. Tony Cruz, of course, has retired. A lot has changed for Real Madrid. I just get the feeling more than the 3 points for us, more it is more about just the psychological thing to just get over if we hypothetically face them later on. Right, it's been done before. All right, under Jurgen Klopp, we've beaten Barcelona, we've beaten Bayern, we've beaten PSG, we've beaten the best of the best. It's just this team which is remaining, and then if we get that over the line, it'll be absolutely amazing. Real Madrid have quality players, and so does Liverpool, and three of them are running out of contract. Mo. I'm sorry, you must have spoken about this at the pub, at your home, at the Anfield Wrap, at Anfield. But now here is an Indian asking you this question as well, Mo, or just discussing about things. That the season started with a bit of curiosity. I became anxious. It reached anger. Now I have detached myself not with the players, not with the club. I've detached myself with the outcome because I feel it just screws with my mind so much more that we are in a situation where the best attacker in the Premier League, the best centre back in the world, and one of our best players in recent times in Trent Alexander-Arnold, who is at his peak right now. are in this position, we are in this position. I, of course, I want to know what you think is going to happen, but more, do people now at the pub? I go to the Epstein's. I don't know whether you know the place behind Anfield. There's a pub known as the Epstein's. I go there, and are the people speaking about it over there in the cop at Anfield before the game, after the game? Is this generally becoming a topic where people are getting frustrated? Because I think we are the only club in the world. More sorry to go on a rant because I feel so animated about this
No, it's
topic.
fine.
We are the only club in the world where the fans are so patient, and also the fans are like, all right, our owners are this way, and they're accommodating enough to understand, all right, we're in this position, but it should happen. We saw that banner in the cop end, FSG, he takes out his bow, now it's time to pay his dough for Mo Salah, right? Are the fans getting angry now? Match going
Well,
fans getting angry?
I don't think so. I don't think it's anger because I think the reality is that we don't know exactly what conversations are being had and what the nature of these conversations are. And so for that reason, you can't get angry because the point is that I don't think you can sit here and say that the club don't want to sign these players. I think the club wants to sign all of them, but we also have to be aware of the fact we don't know what the players are asking for. So, and so without that key bit of information, we don't know whether or not they're being unreasonable. The other thing you have to factor in is that the club didn't want to put themselves in this position either.
Yep,
It happened as a consequence of multiple things.
yep,
Firstly, Julian Ward leaving. Secondly, Jurgen Klopp leaving. Now, the timing of both of those things meant that the normal window for when you would do all of these negotiations, i.e., between the third and the second year to go before the end of the contract, there was too much turmoil. There was so much going on. If you think about the Jörg Schmadtke era, where we essentially just got in someone that Jurgen knew to help him out for a little bit, that didn't really feel like the time. If you're an elite player, there was so much up in the air that you probably don't want to sign at that point. You want to see how it goes. And again, the same with the manager at this point. So as much as we were hoping it would get done in the summer, you understand why the players would be reluctant to sign. They're like, well, I don't want to sign myself up for 3 years. And then it turns out that the club's a basket case and I'm stuck here for another 3 years, particularly in the eyes of Trent Alexander-Arnold. But the longer it goes on, the more we have to hear about it, the harder it becomes. The longer it goes on, the more you believe that they're going to leave. That's just the nature of humans again.
yep,
Personally, I think at the moment they aren't all in the same boat. I think at the moment Salah and Van Dijk want to stay and they are just trying to make sure they get the best possible deal out of the club. I think that they would be willing to compromise with push came to shove in order to stay. For Trent, I'm not so sure that's the case. For two
that
very good,
hurts me. That kind of hurts
it
me.
hurts me too. But there's two very good reasons. One, their age. So Salah and Van Dijk are aware that within the next 3 years, they're probably not going to be first team starters as regularly as they are for Liverpool. So they are aware that the end of their career is coming. But like you said, Trent is coming into his peak years. And so he should not necessarily be settling for anything. And second of all, it's our good friends at Real Madrid, who we have seen play this game with so many different players where they
Yep.
just basically make them wind down all of their contracts and then all of the money that Real Madrid would be paying to their club, they'll pay it to them instead. And so Liverpool need to be in a situation where they're going to say to Trent, we're going to make you the highest paid player in the club. We're going to make you our talisman. We're going to make sure everybody knows you are the most important player at this club. And we see you as our future captain and the guy who's going to lead this team into the next generation. Now, If the
It
club,
sounds so unlike it just sounds so very unlike the way we do things, right? More
it does,
especially
it
when we
does.
sing the Scouser in a team, like if we have to sell him out of all the people. I'm
But
just speaking from my heart right now. I'm just
mm,
speaking from my heart right now. If we have to sell him out of all the people, what we can achieve, what we are, what we're gonna do, it just makes me feel a little sad as a fan. Although I know as a fan and as a player, they're two different things.
yeah,
You can't get too emotional. But I'm just speaking as a fan right now.
no, I get it, and I think, to be honest, there's a key difference between him leaving for nothing and Liverpool selling him. And I
Yep.
think that's his biggest problem. Because make no mistake about it, we absolutely love Trent Alexander-Arnold. He is the epitome of what we see ourselves as Liverpool fans. He is a generational talent and someone who I believe can go on to win the Ballon d'Or, just like he says that he wants to. However, if he leaves this club for nothing, he won't be able to come back. He won't. He will get the Michael Owen treatment. He will not get the Steven Gerrard treatment. And
I was a little scared to ask you that because when I say scared, not scared, scared for my life. I was a little circumspect to ask the same question because I have the same emotion. If you run down your contract when the club is trying to offer you the best that they can, when you have played three Champions League finals and won one, when we have had three title challenges and won one, you were involved in all three. It's not that we have not been competitive, right?
no,
You could have had three Champions League titles, you could have had three titles yourself. We, as a team, as fans, as a club, faltered. Now, when it comes to the right moment at the end, what do you decide? All right, let's leave. That just and obviously this is stemming from because I'm so far away. I don't want to disrespect anyone, but it just feels like a betrayal.
you aren't the only one to think that, honestly. And those emotions will be the strongest emotions, I think, amongst the fan base. Because if you're a player who wants to leave and you want to leave to be to follow your ambitions. So to use the Steven Gerrard example, when Jose Mourinho was at Chelsea and it looked like Chelsea were going to win everything under the sun, and he wanted to move to Chelsea, people didn't like it, but people kind of understood it because even the year that we won the Champions League, we finished fifth in the Premier League,
Yep.
and you know, there's no one who could really honestly say that we were going to be challenging for the Premier League title the season after that. So you can not like it, but you can understand it. And also, there would have been a transfer fee. So we would have been able to reinvest that money into making us maybe closer to what they were. That you understand. Even Michael Owen, who was in a similar situation where he was running his contract down, he didn't let it go to leave on a free. It was £8 million, which isn't a massive amount. But the point is that he also, because that was the year before, he also would not have been able to say, "Well, I can't, I can't fulfill what I want to fulfill here at Liverpool. This team is not good enough." And you couldn't argue with that at the time. No
Yep.
one would have known that we were going to win the Champions League 12 months later. And by the way, if you don't think that he regrets that part of it, if you don't think that him watching his former teammates lift the Champions League wasn't one of the worst days of his life, then I don't know what to tell you. But as you very importantly mentioned, this is different.
Yep.
Liverpool are competitive. Liverpool are still a team that believes that they should be in the latter stages of the Champions League every season. They should be competing for the Premier League into May and April. And yes, he has been a part of why we do that, but he's also been a part of why we haven't won some of those. And so
Precisely.
you have to look at it from both perspectives. And I think people see going to Madrid as, oh, it's just the easy way out because they're just going to always win Champions Leagues because that's what they've done in recent years. Is just whenever they're around, they win it. But then you have to think about, well, what if he's part of the team that doesn't win it? Like, I mean, we've spoken about Chouameni a minute ago. Have you seen the abuse that he's getting right now from the Real Madrid fans because he's had one poor season? Like, I don't think that people really understand what playing for Real Madrid means. People just assume that, oh, it's the easiest job in the world. You just turn up, you win the Champions League. Like, do you know how many times they've won La Liga and the Champions League in the same season, like they did last season?
3 or 4
Twice,
times,
5 times in
five
their
times. Yeah, yeah,
whole history.
yeah,
So I think the idea that they just win everything all the time is overplayed. And going back to what we were saying about the psychological problems with facing them on the pitch, I think off the pitch is even worse. I
yeah,
think there's a certain element where people feel like, oh, well, if he's up against Real Madrid, then obviously they're going to win. No one can say no to Real Madrid. It's like, well, actually, yes, they can. I think they
yeah,
can. Um, but again, it really does depend upon the club because I think that it will come down ultimately that if Liverpool offer him the package that he wants, then he will stay. I still think that deep down, he would rather stay, particularly now, because I think that there may well be a time, people disagree with me on this fact, but I think that there may well be a time, if he signs a 4-year deal, for example, now, in 3 years' time, when he would be 29 years old, I think Real Madrid would still come back for him. And I think that maybe doing a deal at that point where A, he's given us more of his prime years, and B, he's given us a transfer fee.
yep,
I think it would be a much easier deal to have done if that's what he still wants.
yeah. Especially with these people leaving, these legends leaving is tough enough, and letting them go for free is even more tough to digest because very evidently we do sell to buy, and over the last few years we've seen so many players like your Chamberlain, your Firmino, your Naby Keita, your Matip, to Oxlade Chamberlain. The list goes on and on. How many players have left on a free?
Mm-hmm.
If these three leave on a free, knowing how a model works, it's just such a tough pill to swallow. But listen, hey, Mo, before I let you go, I just want to let everyone know that, all right, Mo's YouTube channel, the link is in the title. You have to follow him. I'm not joking, Mo. 37 minutes have just flown by. It's just been a pleasure to speak with you, Mo. Just how would you just how would you expect the rest of the season to pan out? I'm gonna give a bold prediction over here. If we win our next 4 league games, five, I would say five because Fulham is flying as well. And Fulham is at
Mhm.
Anfield. These are the next 5 Premier League games. If we win the next 5 Premier League games, I think we win the league.
I think that's a fair point. I think the danger for me is beating Manchester City and then immediately dropping points because I think that does potentially undermine the damage of that win
Yep.
that win can do. I think we all know deep in our hearts that Manchester City are good enough to go on a run like they have done, but
Yep.
we have to remember also that the season they last year they won the league for the 4th year in a row. No one has done that in the history of English football, and there's a reason for that because
Yep.
it's very very hard to win and win and win and win, and so winning 5 in a row is even harder. So the idea that there's an inevitability that City will win, I disagree with. And I agree with you. I think that we can, in the next month or so, really put ourselves in a situation where perhaps other teams will start to think, well, maybe that we should be concentrating on other trophies. Maybe the Champions League is where we need to be because we've already got 9 points on everybody except City. If we then increase that to 8 points, and frankly, we have to remember the fact that when we're playing Southampton, they're playing Spurs, who have
Yep.
given them lots of trouble. So you can
Yeah.
easily see a world where Liverpool beat Southampton and Manchester City draw with Spurs, and that puts the gap to 7 points. And then Liverpool beat Manchester City, and it's 10 points.
Yeah.
10 points at the start of December. And then, if, as you say, we're able to still win against Newcastle and against Everton, then I just think that, for starters, everybody except City will give up on the idea of winning the league. And I think it might be too much for them. I just do think it might be too far a gap for even them to come back from. So I think that I'd be honestly disappointed if we got to the end of the season and we didn't win any trophies from where we've started. And
Yep.
you can say it's still early, but we're approaching the third of the season. A third is not an insignificant amount. There has been enough
Sure.
evidence to say that this team is good. And I also think we have to factor in the fact that we need to be, well, I wouldn't say it needs to be lucky with injuries. I think we couldn't sustain more than we've got at the moment. So
Yep.
the hope is, over the course of the next month, Allison comes back, Harvey Elliott comes back, Diogo Jota comes back. I think with Chiesa, it's hard to say because his isn't a natural, normal injury. Essentially, it's just about building him up to be able to sustain a Premier League challenge. So I think that we will be able to use him in future, but you hope that there are no one else who goes down who we would have to do without or have to manage through, because that really did hurt us last season. So staying healthy, I think, will be a massive factor in it. But I'm like you. I have all the optimism in the world that this could be the season of seasons.
Absolutely. And if you're able to just get the contracts done, can you just imagine the positivity around the place? I still remember the season when we won the league. Every game just felt like a force.
Mm,
It felt like a tsunami. We're gonna roll over everyone and anyone that comes in our way. And very, very, very early days, kind of feels like that. But if we get over the line over the next few games, I am
mm.
sure every game at Anfield is gonna feel like that. Every away game, every I mean, our away support every time is remarkable. So if
Yeah,
that happens, I mean, it's going to be tough because you play with 11, you play with against Arne Slot, and then you play with the emotion of our crowd, which is unparalleled, which Jabi Alonso said as well recently, and the
yeah,
Brighton manager said as well. You can talk about it, you can prepare for it, but when you face it, there's nothing you can do about it.
no.
Mo, yeah,
I was going to say, in terms of the contracts, I've got an ideal scenario to play out for you. How's this?
go for it.
So, the day before the Man City game, Mo Salah signs. The day before the Merseyside derby, Trent Alexander-Arnold signs. And then on Christmas Day, you see Virgil van Dijk sign. How's that?
The same freaking Christmas tree, right?
Exactly. The same tree. Oh, can you just imagine?
That would be absolutely amazing. But you know what? Like I am imagining, since we're painting a picture which is so beautiful, I am imagining all three of them together signing the new deal as well. And and
Okay.
and 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 and, and to add to that, giving Konate a new deal as well, and yeah, like there are
Yeah.
certain other players as well which need, but too many worries to work to think about right now. Mo. I'm just happy we are in this position. Liverpool is top of the league in the Champions League. Liverpool is top of the league in the Premier League. Liverpool is in the quarterfinal of the UEFA, of the League Cup. We can't ask for anything more. And here on Menace the Monk, more we can't ask for anything more rather than your time. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, man. You're welcome. I just wanted to let everybody out there know, if you wanted to see my writing, then I have a Substack as well as Mo Stewart at substack.com, but it's a zero instead of an O. So if you want to see me doing match reports or just little things that I've noticed and turn them into articles, you can find me there. But yes, my YouTube channel is the place where you get to see me when I'm doing my press conference review. And genuinely, I rely heavily on the support of all of you lovely Liverpool fans out there. So for all of you who want to help me continue to achieve what I'm achieving, please join me on this little journey.
More social media, his writing work, and his YouTube channel. Everything will be provided in the description and in the title as well. Mo, thank you so much for your time. And we always end our video by saying one thing, and I'm gonna say it once again: up the fucking Reds. See you
Up the
guys. Take
fucking
care.
red.
See you guys. Bye bye.